In this presentation, I'm going to show you how EiB AppStudio 2.18 can take some raw data, in this case from an Excel workbook, and transform that into an MI application. And what I'm going to produce from that is I'm going to produce a SQL Server data warehouse from that. I'm going to produce a SQL Server cube from that, then use EiB Report Studio on that new cube to build a report, and then start including some of the new 2.18 functionality that has been shown in other videos, the ability to introduce train of thought analysis, and then the ability to visualize that application in Microsoft's Power BI. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use this using AppStudio, and as you've perhaps seen in other presentations, it's going to take me through the logical process of building an app. What do I need to do first? I need to get some data. If I pick something like an Excel workbook, or I pick something like a SQL database, do I want all of that data? No, I want specific tables, or I want specific worksheets. I'm then going to do some transformation on that data, etc., etc., and ultimately I'm then going to output that information to a SQL Server database or a cube or whatever, and then I'm ready to consume it. Now, I'm not going to show you obviously even more than 1% of AppStudio, I think, in this demonstration, because you can see here that there's a whole raft of objects that are available to us as application developers here to construct your application. And that's allowed us to build some very sophisticated apps in the hotel industry and indeed the insurance and shipping industries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across now to Excel, and I'm going to pick, I've just stored an Excel workbook in the gallery, and it's called AppStudio version 2 XLX, and when I open this, you'll see that this is an ordinary workbook. It's got multiple worksheets in the workbook called the cover page, the instructions, the setup, and the one that I'm interested here is I have a sheet called AppStudio data. So this is data that could exist in a SQL Server database. In this case, it's in columnar format within Excel, and you can see that I've got this dimensionalized by month, time, version, product, and as I scroll across that data, I've got various metrics in there, such as product revenue, service revenue, total income, direct costs, indirect costs, total costs, and then ultimately total profit. So rather than having all that data in a spreadsheet, because remember, if that spreadsheet had thousands or hundreds of thousands of records in it, how would I logically analyze that? I want to put this into a multi-user application that I can consume instantly, multi-user wise, either through Excel or through Power BI. So how would I take that raw data and build it into an app? So I select the EiB administration ribbon in 2.18 and select our AppStudio product. And what that's going to do is it gives me a blank canvas. So it gives me now a blank canvas for me to drag objects onto the screen to do things. I said that the nice thing I like about AppStudio is it takes me logically through the process on building an app. So the first thing I need is some data. That's pretty obvious. Where does this database exist? It's not in a database. It's actually in a file. It's in an Excel file. Is it in multiple Excel files or single Excel files? Is it in CSV files? Well, I know it's in a single workbook here. So I can double click on that, and that will introduce the workbook object. But that's just telling me I've got to get some workbook from Excel. Well, the obvious question next is, what workbook? I can pick a workbook that exists on disk, but in this case, if you remember, I said I stored the workbook in the gallery, so I can pick either there, and the one I was interested in was the AppStudio App Challenge one. So now I've loaded that entire workbook into the palette there, but I don't really want the entire workbook. I actually just want the sheet that is the data sheet. So how do I pick that? I then go to my next object, which is select a specific table or view if you're in SQL Server, or a worksheet if you're in Excel. And if I double click that, that now joins that table, and I can resize this. I can make this application design look nice and make it stand out, and I can change the comments here if I want to, say, pick worksheet on there or whatever I want to do. And now if I double click on here, it now loads the Excel workbook, but now if I click on table, it will show me all the items here underneath here. So I now know that I want the worksheet called AppStudio data, and it will now pick out all the items in there. Now there may be items in there that are superfluous to the model that I want to build in AppStudio or the cube I want to produce, so I can obviously deselect those if they're not applicable. Also, for those of you who are more technically minded, who know about these things, you'll know that when we put data into a database, it is much more important to get the right storage mechanism. It's more important to treat a date as a date, or text as text, or KPIs as values or decimals or whatever it is. They're the sort of things we don't typically worry about when we're just producing Excel workbooks, and we can get the system to examine those for us and actually say, okay, if you go through that, what do you think are the best ways of storing that? Again, if you're particularly technical and you really understand this, then you could actually go there and actually modify those. And if you say, well, I know best here, I want to pick a certain type here of object and reset that, then again you can. So once I've loaded that data in, one of the things I think when you're building these sort of applications, particularly in olden days when you had to write code to do this in other technologies, is you wonder about, well, okay, at this point in time in the app, what does the data look like when I've done stuff on it? The beauty of EiB AppStudio is any object you can right click on and click on view, and that will run the design that you've just created up to there and actually show you the way the actual data looks like. So you can see here at a glance, that's the way the data looks like in the model at this point in time. Now, of course, it would be really nice if applications were this simple as I'm about to make out, but obviously here, if you were handling the real world, you might have other data sources that you're bringing in down here. You might have other objects you need to combine those data sources and match them up so you can logically add them together, and there might be various data cleansing processes that you want to put in there, and adding some time intelligence, adding calculations, all those good things. But I'm going to conveniently ignore that at the moment and say when you get to the end of all that, then ultimately what you want to do is produce a data warehouse and a cube. So how would we do that here? I need to output the data, and where do I want to put this? I want to put it to a database. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a SQL Server data warehouse. So again, by double clicking on here, it now creates the SQL Server warehouse object, and this is where I obviously have to know some information. I have to know the name of the server that the information is stored on, and I have to know my credentials. Obviously your IT department are not going to just let people willy-nilly create SQL Server databases, so I have to know my authentication details here, and then I can give it a database name. So I'm going to call this EiB 218 and a table name EiB 218 and click on OK. Now if I've got this right, if I now process this design, this should create a SQL Server data warehouse for me, as long as I've got all my parameters right. And as I see that nice process complete, that means it has. Now I didn't know anything about SQL Server. I don't know how to build SQL Server databases. I didn't need to there. Same way, I have no idea how to build SQL Server Analysis Services cubes, but what I can now do is I can now double click and build a cube from that data warehouse. And again, when I now click on the cube object, it's now going to give me, again, similar information. I need to know, obviously, the name of the server, and then I can give it the name I want to apply for the cube. And now I've done that, you can see this is what the dimensionality of the cube is going to look like, and I can change my mind here if it's got anything wrong. Obviously a lot of the time it's second guessing things here, but you can see I'm creating a cube where I've got measures ranging from product revenue through to profit, and I've got these other dimensions that I can slice and dice the data by. So now if I run that and process that, then you'll see it works through, and as long as I've created that correctly and I've put in the right parameters, that will create a new cube for me called EiB 218. Okay, now I'm going to want to see the results of that. So if I now minimize the ribbon here, create a new Excel worksheet, and I go to the EiB cube ribbon, I then do new from cube. I'm going to connect to my server, and I should now hopefully see a new cube in here called EiB 218. So if I go down here, you can see there's one called 218. if I click on the cube, I can carry through to designer. Remember, another 218 new piece of functionality I showed in another video is if I click on show cube info there, then it will show me everything that it's found. It will show me when it was last created, which is today's date and the time, and it will show me what's actually in my cube. And then I can say fine, go ahead and go into the designer. So now I am actually creating and looking at that cube. I'm creating a report on that cube rather, and I'm looking at it as I would any other cube. I can now start dragging stuff around. I can take data source out of there, maybe put region into the rows, double click on region there, that gives me a breakdown. Double click on months, gives me the breakdown there. Maybe I want to put product in my criteria. Maybe I want to put time and version into my criteria. So all the sort of standard things we've known and love how to do. Now remember, 218, I also get the ability to do train of thought analysis. So I'm going to set that up on this new report on the new cube as well. So I'm going to go in here and say what sort of things would the user want to do. They might want to analyze things by product, they might want to analyze things by time, they might want to analyze things by version, they might want to analyze things by region, whatever. I can just go through and work my way through there. And now when I click on close, I could now go to the Middle East, and I could right click on there and say I want to analyze by product. That will now create me a brand new report here where I focus on Middle East and look at product. Or I could go on all time months here and say I want to analyze that by time or by year, and that gives me a year breakdown. And then I could go to FY218 and then say I want to analyze that by version, and it'll give me a breakdown of actuals and budget. So hopefully what you've seen there is very quickly to take some source information, turn that into an MI application, turn that into a database, a cube that is now available multi-user. This is not this Mickey Mouse Excel application. I could now make this available to all my users, and I've also built in train of thought analysis. So if they want to go off-road and start analyzing lists by that, then they can do so really, really easily. And now I guess the next thing is, well, okay, if I've got a new cube that didn't exist 5 minutes ago, I've been visualizing that in EiB Report Studio. What happens if I wanted to take that same cube and then visualize that in Power BI? So in Power BI there's two pieces of software. There's a desktop author, so you can desktop author first, i.e. on your local machine, and you can then publish that through to a web service where it can then be consumed through browsers or through mobile devices. So this is the Power BI main menu. What I'm going to do here is I want to get some data, and just in the same way as I did in my EiB Report Studio add-in, I've got to tell us where do I get that data from and what is the sort of data that I've got. Now I've got a SQL Server cube, which is SQL Server Analysis Services. That's what it's known as internally, the techie term for it. So I'm going to connect to that pretty much in the same way as we would connect to the cube using our own Report Studio. And again, it would really help if I spelt this correctly. So EiB Analytics, and I'm going to say Connect Live, and now it gives me a list of the cubes, and there should be one if I scroll down here called EiB 218. So this is exactly the same cube as I created and then consumed in EiB Report Studio. You can see, similar to the EiB product, the Microsoft product also gives you metadata here showing when it was last modified and what's actually in that cube. And when I click on OK, I get a blank canvas, but here are all the dimensions now that you can see from my cube. So the first thing I might want to do is I might want to focus in on something, so I'm going to home in on profit. So if just clicking on profit there will choose a default visualization, which is a bar chart, and show me profit. So that's entire profit for all time, for all cost centers, for all products, for all regions, etc., etc. Now, one of the things that's really nice in Power BI, it's a really simple drag and drop interface. So if I wanted to analyze profit by product, then it's as hard as dragging product into that chart and now I've got a breakdown by product. Now you might say, okay, but I want a similar chart now, broken down by region and by time. So what I can do in Power BI is I can very easily use traditional Microsoft copy paste, Control C, Control V. So I've now got two copies of exactly the same visualization. But in the second one there, I'm going to drag region across here. And now I've got the same dashboard, but this one shows it to me by product, this one shows it to me by region. And if I do another Control V here and take the same sort of approach, then I could say I want to break this one down by time. But what I'm also going to do on this one, and this is where it is quite interesting, you can build in drill down hierarchies by saying I want it to be by time and then by month. So if I pick on a year and click on that, I want to drill it down to the months in that year. Now finally, you might say, well, in the EIB Report Studio in Excel, you also could change the criteria. Well, you can do that exactly the same in Power BI by using these filters, or slicers as they call them. So if I click on the slicer object here and say what sort of things would the user might want to change, they might want to change the product. So here is a list of products. Again, what I could do is I could Control C, Control V and make that second one region. So again, if I just drag region into there, and now you'll see if I pick just Asia, that would now home in on the Asia region, show me the products for Asia, and show me the FY 2017, 18 and 16 for that. Now you'll see actually here that interestingly enough, by default Power BI sorts best first. That's why you've got 217, 18, 16 rather than 16, 17, 18. You should see that from the values. If I look here, you can see the profit is 5.7 million. You can see that was 5.9 and that was 5.981. So it ranks them. If you don't want to do that, you can click on here and you can actually sort by time. And now that will show you 18, 16, 17. You can rotate which way you want to do this ascending sort, descending sort. So I'm showing 18, 17, 16, or you could show 16, 17, 18. So you've got a lot of control there. The other thing you'll notice though is that I can actually put drill down on here. So if I turn on drill down and now click on 217, you'll see now that breaks it down into the individual months in 218, and I can drill back up accordingly and then double click and actually drill down on 216. In a very short space of time here, I've built a dashboard where I can drill up and drill down on time, which obviously you can't easily do in Excel, and also I can now visualize this by profit or by region. If I deselect Asia now, then I'll obviously get all my regions back. Now because this is demo data, perhaps it doesn't show it quite as clearly, but if I also click on network accessories here, this is where you see the cause and effect, and you can see because the data is roughly proportional here, it's not so big in terms of showing the differences. But by clicking on network, this is the proportion of network accessories by year. The heavy shaded area here is the highlighted version there. That shows me out of my 29.2 million profit in FY 2016, then 5.8 million of that was actually due to network accessories. Likewise, if I move over and look at South America, then out of my 17.9 million profit for South America in total, then network accessories attributed 3.7 million of that. Now this is cross-dimensional filtering at any chart. I can actually say, okay, here I homed in on a product, but I could also do the same on a region. I could say I want to home in on North America. So now I'm going to click on North America, and now it flips it the other way, and now it shows me North America's contribution by product and by time. Or I could even click on a bar, click on 216, and actually show me now the contribution of 216 across all my years by product and by region and so forth. So really, really powerful way of showing this. So hopefully what you've seen here is using the combination of EIB AppStudio 218, EIB Report Studio 218, and Power BI functionality that's available on EIB Analytics 218, we can build a much richer application experience, and I've done all that in about 15 minutes.